Imagine an 8-year-old prince standing in the middle of a schoolyard, not thinking about crowns, titles, cameras, or royal protocol, but about one thing only: protecting his sister. According to the story presented in this report, that is exactly what allegedly happened at Lambrook School, where Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis are said to have been given a carefully protected environment away from the relentless attention surrounding the British royal family. But on one particular day, that sense of safety was reportedly shattered. An incident involving Princess Charlotte allegedly escalated inside the school grounds, and what happened next turned an ordinary school day into a dramatic confrontation involving Prince Louis, Prince William, the school administration, and the wider royal establishment. The most shocking part of the story isn't simply that Louis allegedly confronted another student, it is what happened after that, because according to this narrative, the adults were more concerned about Louis's reaction than about what had allegedly happened to his sister. And when Prince William learned about it, the story claims that the future king made one thing absolutely clear: his children's safety would come before royal image. Lambrook School was reportedly chosen by William and Catherine because it offered their children something extremely difficult to find in royal life: privacy. Away from the cameras and endless public attention, George, Charlotte, and Louis could supposedly attend school like ordinary children. They could study, play, make friends, and experience moments that had nothing to do with the monarchy. At least that was the intention. But being born into the royal family means the attention never completely disappears. Even behind school gates, the children remain members of one of the most recognizable families in the world. Every movement can attract attention. Every disagreement can become a story. Every mistake can be interpreted through the lens of their royal status. And according to the narrative, Princess Charlotte was already beginning to understand that pressure. At just 9 years old, she was portrayed as mature, responsible, and unusually aware of the expectations surrounding her. She knew how to behave in front of cameras. She understood that people watched her. She understood that even small mistakes could be discussed publicly, but behind that calm exterior was still a young girl. And according to the story, one school incident allegedly pushed her into a situation where her usual royal composure became difficult to maintain. The details described in the narrative suggest that the trouble began during a routine transition period at the school. What should have been an ordinary moment reportedly became increasingly uncomfortable when an older student allegedly began targeting Charlotte. The student was described as coming from a privileged background and as someone who understood that the royal children lived under unusual restrictions. According to the account, what began as verbal harassment allegedly became more aggressive. Charlotte was reportedly mocked and intimidated. The situation allegedly became physical when the older student grabbed her arm as she attempted to walk away. For a moment, Charlotte reportedly froze. She had been taught to remain composed. She had been taught not to react emotionally. She had been raised with an understanding that public behavior mattered. But according to this narrative, those lessons suddenly worked against her. Instead of fighting back, she reportedly tried to remove herself from the situation. And that is when someone else noticed. Prince Louis, from a distance, the youngest Wales child, allegedly saw what was happening. He didn't see a princess trying to maintain royal dignity. He didn't see a future member of the monarchy. He saw his sister being frightened. And for Louis, according to the story, that was enough. The rules changed instantly. The royal protocol disappeared. The cameras didn't matter. The opinions of adults didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was Charlotte. According to the narrative, Louis suddenly ran toward the confrontation. He reportedly placed himself between Charlotte and the older student. And then came the words that have become the emotional center of this story. "Don't touch my sister." The account describes the schoolyard falling silent. An 8-year-old prince was allegedly standing between his sister and someone considerably older and larger. Louis was reportedly furious. But beneath that anger was something much simpler: fear for his sister. According to the story, he was not thinking about whether his actions looked appropriate for a royal. He was thinking about whether Charlotte was safe. The situation reportedly ended quickly after adults intervened. But the real conflict, according to this narrative, was only beginning, because the school's response allegedly created a completely different problem. Instead of focusing entirely on the older student's alleged behavior, attention reportedly shifted toward Louis. His reaction was described as unacceptable: his raised voice, his physical intervention, his refusal to simply stand back. From an institutional perspective, his behavior could be viewed as a breach of school rules. But according to the story, some members of the palace establishment were concerned about something else. They were worried about the image. An angry Prince Louis confronting another student was not the sort of story the royal institution would want circulating. The narrative claims that private discussions followed. School officials and palace representatives allegedly discussed how the situation should be handled, and according to the account, some wanted Louis to apologize. Not simply because he had become involved in a physical confrontation, but because they believed a royal child was expected to behave differently. That was reportedly the moment the situation moved from a school discipline issue to a family conflict. Because the question was no longer simply whether Louis had broken a rule, the question became whether a child should be punished for defending his sister. Eventually, according to the story, William was contacted. The expectation was reportedly that he would respond as the future king, calmly, carefully, respectfully. Accept the school's explanation, and perhaps instruct Louis to apologize. But according to the narrative, that is not what happened. When William allegedly heard that Charlotte had been intimidated and that Louis was now the one facing serious criticism, his reaction was completely different. The story portrays William not as the future king in that moment, but simply as a father who had just learned that his daughter had allegedly been mistreated, and his young son was being blamed for intervening. William reportedly traveled to the school. And when he arrived, the atmosphere allegedly changed immediately. This was not described as a routine royal visit. There were no smiles for photographers, no ceremonial greetings, no carefully prepared public appearance. According to the story, William went directly to the administration. Inside the office, the narrative places Louis and Charlotte together. Louis was reportedly still shaken by what had happened. Charlotte was allegedly trying to hold herself together, and William was confronted with the sight of both children dealing with the aftermath. The headmaster reportedly attempted to explain the situation as a disciplinary matter, but according to the account, William wanted a much more fundamental answer. How had an older student allegedly been able to intimidate his daughter? Why had the focus shifted so quickly toward Louis? And why was the boy who allegedly stepped in to protect his sister being treated as though he were the central problem? According to the narrative, William became increasingly angry when palace representatives allegedly reminded him that Louis's behavior could create negative publicity. The future king reportedly rejected that argument. The story portrays William making his position extremely clear. He was not interested in appearances. He was not interested in protecting an outdated image of royal perfection. And he was not prepared to allow his children to suffer simply because the institution wanted everything to look controlled. According to the account, William allegedly refused to force Louis into an apology for protecting Charlotte. Instead, he reportedly challenged the adults in the room to consider what they were teaching his children. Should Charlotte learn that she must remain silent when someone crosses a boundary? Should Louis learn that defending his sister is wrong simply because his reaction might look bad? Or should the children be taught that their safety and family loyalty matter too? That was reportedly the heart of William's argument. And according to the story, the confrontation became so intense that William allegedly warned that the relationship between the royal family and the school could be reconsidered if the safety of his children was not treated as the highest priority. But the most emotional part of the story allegedly happened after the adults left. The confrontation was over, the official discussion had ended, and William was no longer speaking as the Prince of Wales. He was simply a father standing in front of his children. According to the narrative, William approached Louis. The little boy had reportedly spent much of the incident believing he had done something terribly wrong. He had shouted, he had physically intervened, he had broken the expected rules of behavior, and now he was waiting for punishment. But instead of shouting at him, William allegedly pulled him into an embrace. According to the story, William told Louis that he was proud of him, not because fighting is the answer, not because losing your temper is acceptable, but because Louis had seen his sister in distress and refused to ignore it. That distinction is important. The story is not really about celebrating aggression, it is about the instinct to protect someone you love. And according to the narrative, William wanted Louis to understand that his loyalty toward his sister was not something he should be ashamed of. He then reportedly turned his attention toward Charlotte. She had allegedly spent the incident trying to remain composed. But according to the account, William reassured her that she did not have to silently accept mistreatment simply because she was a member of the royal family. She could ask for help, she could speak, she could expect the people around her to protect her. And that moment allegedly represented something bigger than a school incident. It represented a different approach to raising royal children. For generations, members of the monarchy have often been expected to control their emotions, remain calm, maintain dignity, never give the public a reason to criticize. But William and Catherine have repeatedly been portrayed as parents who want their children to experience a more normal upbringing. And according to this story, William's response at Lambrook reflected that philosophy. His children were not simply future representatives of the crown, they were children first. George was a child. Charlotte was a child. Louis was a child. And according to the narrative, William wanted them to know that family came before appearances. That message may be especially significant because William himself grew up under enormous institutional pressure. He experienced the consequences of living a life where personal pain could become public property. He watched his mother struggle under intense media attention. He understood how damaging it could be when image becomes more important than emotion. And according to the story, he did not want his children to inherit that same burden. The alleged incident at Lambrook therefore becomes much larger than one confrontation. It becomes a story about the future of the royal family. Will the next generation be raised according to the old rules? Rules that demand silence, emotional control, and unquestioning obedience? Or will William and Catherine create something different? A family where their children are allowed to express themselves. A family where siblings protect one another. A family where emotional safety is considered just as important as royal duty. According to the narrative, Prince Louis may have given a very early glimpse of what that new generation could look like. He is often portrayed publicly as the playful one, the unpredictable one, the child who makes funny expressions and refuses to behave exactly as expected. But behind that playful personality, this story presents another side of Louis: loyalty, courage, and a powerful attachment to his family. If the reported account is accurate, the most important thing about that day was not that Louis lost his temper. It was that he refused to ignore his sister's distress, and perhaps that is why the reaction from William became so significant. He wasn't simply defending Louis from school discipline. He was defending the principle that his children should not be taught to sacrifice their emotional well-being for the sake of appearances. Of course, the claims described in this story have not been independently confirmed, and there is no official evidence establishing the dramatic confrontation exactly as presented. But the narrative raises an interesting question about royal parenting. How much should children be expected to sacrifice for the institution they were born into? At what point does royal discipline become too heavy for a child? And when a child chooses family over protocol, should that instinct be punished or understood? Those questions will become even more important as George, Charlotte, and Louis grow older, because one day these children will have to decide what kind of royal family they want to represent. And perhaps the strongest message they could carry into that future is not perfection. It is loyalty, not fear, but confidence, not silence, but the ability to speak when something is wrong. According to this dramatic narrative, that is what Prince William allegedly wanted his children to understand that day. Charlotte should never feel that she has to suffer quietly. Louis should never believe that protecting someone he loves automatically makes him a bad person. And both children should know that, before they are princes and princesses, they are members of a family. That may be the most powerful part of this entire story, because the future of the monarchy will eventually be shaped by these children, but before they carry the weight of the crown, they are still growing up, they still need protection, they still need guidance. And perhaps most importantly, they still need to know that they are allowed to be human. So whether this dramatic account is ultimately proven, exaggerated, or simply represents a fictionalized interpretation of royal family life, its central question remains powerful. What matters more, a perfect royal image, or the emotional safety of a child? And if William really did choose his children over the expectations of the establishment, then perhaps the most important change in the modern monarchy is not happening inside Buckingham Palace at all. Perhaps it is happening inside the family, a family learning that duty does not have to mean silence, a family learning that strength does not always mean hiding emotion, and a father teaching his children that no crown is more important than protecting the people you love. If you found this story compelling, make sure to subscribe for more royal documentaries, emotional stories, and dramatic accounts surrounding the British royal family. And let us know in the comments, if a child stepped in to protect their sibling, should they be punished for the way they reacted, or should the adults first ask what caused the situation? Because when it comes to the royal family, the biggest stories are not always about crowns and ceremonies. Sometimes they are about something much simpler.